morning. So I thought this morning what I would do, kind of a two-part thing here, is take you through my process when someone contacts me to do alterations for them, the things that I have in place, and what I have found works best for me to get things on the calendar and get appointments made and make sure that everything works out. Now, having said that, it's not a foolproof system. And I am still working on some things that are definitely like user error, I'll say that much. But it took a while to come up with this particular system for me, and I know everybody does it different. You can get different software and different apps to set appointments, and you might have something else that you want to use. There are websites also that exist that allow clients to make their own appointments, to set up their own appointments via the website. If you plug in, I'm sure we've all encountered those before with other people, and I do know alterations people who use that to set up appointment times, which saves you some of the hassle of going back and forth trying to figure out a time that works for everybody. Nothing wrong with that. But I'll just explain how mine is done, and then you can take away what you will with it, as usual. If it works, it works. So a potential client can contact me a bunch of different ways. I can get a phone call, I can get a text. Those are the two most common ways. I get emails off of my website, and I also get messages off of my Facebook page. So any of those is a way that somebody could contact me. And I have to deal with them all slightly differently, although not really. So my aim here is to get them lined up for an appointment and to get that appointment put into my system so that I know about it. A lot of times when somebody contacts me, let's say they're going to text, because whether they text or do a Facebook message or an email, that's all written communications, very similar. My contact form on my website, when someone wants to contact me, does ask for a phone number, and it says on there on the web page, it says, I will be contacting you via text. So if I get an email through the website, I have their phone number and I text them in response. So let's say somebody texts me and says, "Hi, this is Becky and I need a bridesmaid's dress hemmed." My reply right away is to, thank them and to ask when the event is. Sometimes they will tell you, but, figure out when the event is, because that's going to make a difference for a lot of reasons, later on, in terms of if it's a rush or not. Ask them how when the event is. Sometimes they will outright tell you what they need done. For example, if it's just a hem. If not, you can ask them, do you know what you need done? Of course, a lot of times they're not going to know. But sometimes you can get valuable information. So, hey, Becky, I need a bridesmaid's dress hemmed. I'd like to make an appointment. Okay, great. When's the event? They give you the event, and then I personally don't do evening appointments. I have my shop hours, and they are what they are. So the next question that always is asked is, do you need a Saturday appointment, or can you come during the weekday? And you will get that information from them. And then at that point, I go over to my calendar and start looking at my availability. Now, my personal calendar, my family calendar has my appointments on it. I actually have a second calendar also, but that is a whole different discussion. For now, I look on my personal calendar. Part of the reason that I have gone into business for myself is because I have a lot of appointments and obligations with my family, and I needed that flexibility. And so, while I have fairly regular hours here working, I do keep that flexibility, and I always cross-check to make sure that I don't have other family appointments. So for me, logging my appointments in on my family calendar is the easiest thing to do. If you're going to have set up very specific hours that you're at work, you can do it a different way. It just depends, I think, on what your priority is and what works for you. Everybody's going to be a little bit different that way. So, at that point, I tell you outright, sometimes, somebody will be like, well, I can come in on Thursday. And I will look, and my Thursday calendar will have zero appointments that day. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to be in there working. And it doesn't mean that things aren't going to come up. It's just at the time that they call, or text me, I have no appointments that day. This also happens with people, who are calling like way ahead of time, like brides who reach out like now and say, oh yeah, I'm getting married, in February or March. And you're like, wow, okay, I'll put you on the calendar. And you look, and I mean, at this point, I don't book that far out, so that whole day is empty. But you don't want to say like, hey, I can get you in literally any time. Go ahead and come up with a couple of times that are going to work for you. Oh, I can get you in Thursday at 10 or 11, or at 1. Do any of those work with you? Don't give people just like, any random, like, anytime. You can come in anytime. You don't really want to do that. So get that booked up. My calendar, and I think most online calendars, defaults to 1 hour on meetings, and I haven't changed that. Do I need a full hour to do a bridesmaid fitting or a bridesmaid pickup? Absolutely not. But I leave it alone. I feel like that also gives me a lot of little pockets during the day when I'm between fittings that I can sit down and get things done. And so I leave it alone that way. If I get too full and I start needing to do meetings on a half an hour, I can go back in and add those. I just haven't changed the default. So we'll figure out a time to meet. Sometimes you have brides that say, and this is very helpful, that say, do you know how much this is going to cost? Can you give me a cost estimate? Okay, this is a whole can of worms when you have that happen. And I can usually do a price range, and I tell them upright, based off, of photos. So the bride always has a photo of themselves in the dress from when they picked it up from the studio, or whatever. They have, because they're not going to know. They don't know. I mean, if you say, well, does it have this or this or this? Whether or not they understand the thing that you're saying really varies. it's easier for you just to ask for some pictures and be like, okay, well, clearly there's appliques around the hem, and clearly there's horsehair, or this doesn't look like it's a very big hem. And a lot of times people will say, well, it's not very big hem, and you look at it and you're like, well, I think we have a different definition of big. So if you can get some pictures of them, and also it kind of just helps you know what you're getting yourself into that day when the day of the fitting rolls around. See if they have pictures, give them ranges. If they want to know price, tell them, I need to really see it, but I can tell you, for dresses like this, the first layer is going to be X amount of money, or the side seams, because I can see that there's lace there, that's going to be at least, starting at or in this range. Don't give them necessarily an exact number. That's not really what you need to do. What you need to do is give them a range, and they will be happy, and you can fix it later. So you just do what you need to do that way. That gives you some idea, and I do like on brides especially to get pictures of them in the dress prior. If I can, it just does kind of give you a heads up on what's coming in. Doesn't always happen, but they always have pictures of themselves in the dress because they've been there shopping. Everybody takes pictures of the dress, so they have a picture they can send you. And even if it's a bride who calls you, you can say, hey, do you have a picture of the dress? Can you send me over a picture? And at that point, you can take the conversation into texting. I personally am more comfortable with texting. I think everybody's different. What I find that does is that the younger generation, so to speak, I'm ancient. The younger generation is very comfortable with texting. It gives me some flexibility if I can't get back to somebody right away. And it also gives me a written record of what is going on, because sometimes if I'm on a phone call, I'm like, did I say 11 or did I say noon? And I'm trying to talk to them on the phone and pull up my calendar on the phone and put all this information in during a phone call. I just trust the text a little bit more because I can go back and refer to it. Yes, you can line the appointment up while you're talking on the phone. Yes, you can take notes while you're talking on the phone. But moving it over to a text is easier. The other thing that happens is once we get figured out a time, I have prepared on Canva, it was a flyer, an information sheet that I sent to everybody. I even send this to people when I have them for regular clothing. I send it out anyway, and I say, hey, I'm sending you some information. A lot of this is for bridal, but this might be useful to you. The sheet is just a information sheet that I made. It has several different elements on it. It has my address. Because I am in a large building, in a studio in that building, I have a picture of the outside of the building. I have information about the nearest corner. I have information about parking. And I have information about where my studio is inside the building. Boom. It saves me from having to tell people that every single time. I just send them the flyer. I have a short bio about myself. I find that this saves a lot of time with people being like, oh, it's the low key, but do you know what you're doing? That low key, like, so have you been doing this for very long, or so have you done a lot of this kind of work? People are handing you their wedding dress and they want to make sure that you know what you're doing. Short bio cuts to the chase on that. It makes them more comfortable and get to know you a little bit better. It has a photo of me so that they know who they are coming to see. It has information about their fitting, including, wearing your shoes, wearing your undergarments. It has information about the fitting that is, under 18. It has to have a parent with them. I don't want kids. I can't have kids running around in here. These are rules that you make up because you didn't think you need them, and then something happens where you're like, yeah, I guess I need to make a rule about people letting their, small children run loose during fittings. I have that kind of information on there, very short, very succinct, straight to the point. People don't read a whole lot. There are 6 steps from the main entryway to where my studio is. I have a note on there about that because if somebody needs accessibility, I can move the fitting to a different area in this building. So I let everybody know that that's there so that they can contact me if there's an issue. I also have information about what kind of payment I accept, so that people are aware up front what my payment options are. And I have people pay when they pick up. That is on there. That's a whole discussion of much controversy. But I have people pay when they pick up. And that's on there. I have information about, this is how we'll set up your next appointment. And all of that's on this sheet. Very nice little graphic situation going on. I can show it later or upload a copy of it, but it's pretty basic stuff. Now, when I worked from home, I also had a version. I'm on like the 3rd version of this sheet that I send out. The first version of it was because I was working from home. I wanted, it had a photo of the outside of my house because I did not give out my address until an appointment was set up. So because it's my home address, I was very careful with that. It had a photo of the house and the address. It also had a photo of my sewing studio. It had the bio. It clearly, I have cats. The cats never really messed with the dresses, but they did exist in the home. I have friends who are very, very allergic to cats. I'm very aware that this is not for everyone. I wanted people to know up front that there were cats in the house who may or may not say hi to you. I always had people who were super happy and excited in petting the cats, but I'm sure that there's probably going to be somebody eventually who would be upset by it. For the most part, people adored it. I have one very pretty but incredibly stupid cat that wants to make friends with everybody, and people would just gush all over this cat, but not everybody's gonna like that. I had that information, so even if you're working from home, it's not a bad idea to send this information out to people ahead of time. Now, what I did was I created it on Canva, saved it, and then I exported it to my photos. So it is saved in my photos, which means I can pull it up on my phone, I can pull it up on my laptop. Once the appointment is set, I say, hey, I'm going to be sending you some additional information about your appointment, and boom, off the photo goes. And it has all the information that they need coming into their appointment. It has where I am, has what they need to bring, has the payment information, has a little bit about me. This is all good stuff. It's hang on just a second. There we go. So it does what it needs to do. I put on there mainly things that came up during fittings or things that I was having to tell people over and over and over again. Here's my address, here's where you park, just if you put it on a flyer or an information sheet that you can upload to your photos, and just boom, even when I talk to people on the phone, when they call me to set up an appointment, at the end of the call, I say, hey, is this your cell phone? Can I text you? I need to text you an information sheet. Are you calling from your cell phone? Of course, they always are, because what else? People aren't calling from a landline. I can text them over. I text them that sheet, and then I text them like, I have you on the calendar for 10 o'clock Monday, July 15th at 10 o'clock. See you then, and that automatically is landed on my phone. It's documented. It will link over because you put the date and the time in it. It links itself into a calendar And it's there. You've covered your butt, everything's on the calendar. If you need to go back and refer to it, you can find it easily doing a search. I don't know about you all, but my phone, because at this point I still use my personal cell phone for business, I have just tons and tons of texts that if you look down the list, all of them are like, great, see you then. Great, thanks, see you soon. And I'm like, who is Emma? What is Emma? I have Emma today. What is going on with Emma? I can search and I can pull up the times that I've communicated with Emma or communicated with that phone number, and I have an idea of what I've done. And that's just been the easiest cheat for me. If you have the time and the ability to go in and do a Google Calendar entry for every one of your appointments where you document everything you talked about and talk about, everything about the dress and upload pictures into a Google Calendar and do all of those things to document all of your appointments, absolutely do it, okay? I don't have time to do that. I'm doing this all myself. I am taking appointments while I'm sewing. I'm taking appointments while I'm sitting in parking lots waiting for my kids to come out. I need to be able to do something that I can do on my phone where I can have them on speaker and pop over to my calendar and then send them the information they need. So having that flexibility is really, really important for me. But that sets everything up so that it is in my personal calendar. It's documented via text, their phone number, and when the appointment is, so that I can get to them again if I need to. And it's all living there for reference, and it's all ready to go into the appointment. The client has the information that they need to show up prepared with everything, and they feel very comfortable about the process. That information sheet makes it seem very professional. And so I find that people are really happy about that information sheet, wildly happy about it. That's fine. But anyway, that gets us to the appointment, and that's where I'm going to stop this video. And I will be back to talk more then about the paperwork that I use for the fittings and tracking the business. I'll be back for that part of it. Bye-bye.